This week on Capitol Report, Governor Lamont delivers his budget address.
Our proposed budget is our best effort to stay true to our Connecticut values.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You do, that's good.
Today, we're much better prepared to manage the unexpected.
While Republican leaders alarmed by what they heard.
It's official that the fiscally moderate Ned Lamont has left the building.
I think universally this budget is dead on arrival.
It's a Mr. Death or something. He's come about the reaping.
Plus, President Trump's proposal to take over Gaza and rebuild.
I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East.
Hold on. Why build? Hey, you're better off leasing at $1.25 a square foot.
And a Connecticut senator's vitriol over the power play taking place in Washington by Elon Musk.
We don't pledge allegiance to Elon Musk. No. We pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
I'm so proud tonight. Oh, say can you see?
Your Super Bowl Sunday edition of Capitol Report starts now. Welcome to Capitol Report. I am Tom Dutch. We are so glad you're spending part of the Super Bowl Sunday shoveling out from the snow. Don't shovel the driveway just yet. Alongside the power panel, Danielle Wong, Mayor of Bloomfield, Connecticut. Welcome. Join us so much, the coach, former Speaker of the House.
Good morning, sir.
Liz Carreno, it's our Republican strategy is still there, joins the panel. And Johnny Mack is back, Johnny Mack. Tan, rested, and ready, baby. All right, let's do it.
Maybe not tea.
Okay, well, less than a week out from Valentine's Day, and let's just say Republicans won't be bringing candy and flowers to Governor Lamont's office this year. The minority party teeing off on the governor's two-year, $55 billion budget plan. You heard it in the open. Vin Candelora called it dead on arrival. But folks, just remember, it's February 9th, and we have miles to go before we sleep on this budget deal. Legislative session, the big initiative of the governor announced is a proposal to expand for early child care programs, education spending, and special education services. But how would he pay for it? Take a listen to this.
Proposing that we move 3% of the revenue from our pension pay down into the general fund, 3%. And any surplus in the general fund, estimated at $300 million per year, will be deposited into our brand new universal preschool endowment. $300 million from our fiscal 2025 surplus to seed this fund, and our budget anticipates a $1 billion endowment over the next few years. God, the economy, and President Trump willing.
What did Republican leaders think of the budget address? Well, I'll let the sound speak for itself. What do you think? Roll this.
It opens up the fiscal guardrails beyond what we could have even imagined, and it's opened up the candy store to the majority party Democrats who have said that they want to spend $3 billion in increased spending, gimmicks to get around the guardrails, slush funds. This is not the fiscally moderate governor that got reelected just 2 years ago.
He's done nothing for electricity costs. He's done nothing for public safety. He's doubled down on immigrants. I mean, he is capping health care for our disabled, but he won't cap illegal immigrant health care.
So, Simmons, you probably don't believe in that, huh?
No, look, the governor's opening budget is always the opening salvo of the session. It puts issues on the table that he wants to talk about, and I think he hit it out of the park when he talks about child care and special education. Those are two issues that have dogged this state for as long as I've been involved in politics, and we haven't really gotten it right. I think it's a great idea. It opens up the discussion of what the caps look like, what do the volatility caps look like, where are we going in the state with that. It's very clear the House Democrats and Senate Democrats would like to spend more money, but targeted money towards economic development. Child care checks that box. It allows people to get back into the workplace. So I like the tone. It sounded like a governor that was running for re-election to me.
Well, I agree with you on that point. I think this was very much a step in that direction, and anybody reading the tea leaves here, I think, walks away thinking that Ned Lamont is probably going to run for re-election. I think on the early childhood education piece, though, to your point, Joe, this has been going on for decades, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact this was a major initiative of Governor Jody Rell when she took office in 2007. This is what she really wanted to get done, and I can't help but think if we were able to do something about it then, the issues we're seeing on the 119K commission, we would have absolved. And it's important to note, Republicans are for this. In fact, the House Republicans put this in their budget proposal. They just put it and pay for it in a different way. And what their initiative is to take the money that's intended for the baby bonds, and instead of giving a $3,500 payout to 18-year-olds, to take those resources and invest them in early childhood education and help these kids when they need it.
All right, guys, Democratic leaders in the Senate seem pleased with the governor's address. Take a listen to Marty Looney and Bob Duff. Watch this.
What the governor has said as a snapshot in time was a reasonable beginning for our budget process. But again, we are at the beginning of that budget process. Don't know what's facing us yet on the federal side. But I'm very encouraged that he touched upon the major themes that the Democratic majorities in the legislature are concerned about.
I think the Republicans are looking for reasons why to be negative about it. They're looking for kind of rooting for failure on a budget that is, as Senator Looney said, is a great starting place and a place that we would normally have no problems. But, you know, they're so interested in trying to create chaos, kind of like what's happening in Washington, that here's where we are.
Well, the only mayor on the panel, Danielle, the mayors across the state can't be very happy about this. But first, take a beat on the baby bond stuff.
Well, I think it's unfortunate if we decide to divert baby bonds, the intent of baby bonds, which is a long-term investment for those most vulnerable and those most harmed, which impacts all of the state of Connecticut and generations to come. So I really hope that there are folks that in the legislature that hold the line on that and continue in the ways to produce the baby bonds and implement it as it was written and it was approved. But back onto the municipal side of things, or from a local standpoint, I am a little taken aback on both ends, whether you're Republican or Democrat. I don't believe municipalities, if mayors and selectmen read that budget, don't get the things that we need, right? What I see is status quo funding for municipalities. Some municipalities are cherry picked and some get more than others. So we have to take a deeper dive. I understand this is a start to the budget. And I said before, the governor is going to have to come to the table very early to show good faith, because there is a veto-proof majority Democrats in the legislature. So he's going to have to start in a compromising disposition. So I think that's what we're seeing right now. What I do also see and read between the lines is a deficit in services such as nonprofits. We have a ton of food scarcity issues. We have human services that are being reduced to the day-to-day, and it's going to fall on the backs of local tax dollars and taxpayers. So when I hear the Democrats and the Republicans at the legislature jockey for the narrative, what I'm hearing is we're not really in tune with the taxpayers on the local perspective, and we need to really get back to centralizing the taxpayers, which is all.
Hey, McKinney, have at it.
Well, I think, look, I think the governor's speech overall was good. The Republican response is very understandable and predictable. Governor Lamont said, I'm going to spend $1 billion more a year. Republicans think that's too much spending when people in Connecticut are still faced with high inflation, high grocery costs, high energy costs. Let's bring some of that extra money back to the taxpayers, and the Republicans have put together a plan that would give about $1,000 of relief to working families across the state of Connecticut. So I think that all makes sense. Look, we all know the governor's budget isn't going to pass as is. The Democrats are going to pass their budget. That's not going to pass it as is. And then the governor's going to sit down, hopefully with Democrats and Republicans, and they'll all come up with a budget. I do think the governor got ahead of the Democrats. We knew that they were going to try to undo the guardrails. Republicans are going to fight against that, but at least what the governor's proposed is to put money into an endowment so it can't all be spent at once. My only message to the governors, a 10% spend rate is way too much on endowment. Universities universally spend 4 or 5% spend rate. If you spend 10%, you're going to end up with no endowment at the end of the day.
There you go. Goes, well, the day before the governor's budget address, McKinney's Republicans got together to roll out their own tax cut plan. On the list, cuts to income tax, a freeze on pay raises for state employees, and trimming back about $1 billion of state-provided state sales tax exemptions. Watch this.
Ultimately, these are the type of taxes that you're hitting the middle-class, working-class people the most in the most positive manner. You're putting money most directly back in their pockets. I heard that there might be some discussion about corporate tax relief, and that's great, but we ultimately should be focusing on the middle-class and working-class people of the state, which this plan would address.
What our goal is delivering a $1,000 tax cut to middle-class families in the state. In the second biennium, so starting in fiscal year 28, you could do that, yes, with the savings accrued from the 2-year wage freeze, yes, by finding about $1 billion out of $10 billion of special tax expenditures.
And guys, and the Yankee Institute said, and buried on page 199 of the state budget, $370 million for state employee pay raises, guys. What do you think of that one, huh?
Well, look, you look back at the state employees, and I say it all the time, from 2002 with Governor Rowland all the way up till 2016, it was a whole heck of a lot of zeros. There was no increases. There was changes to medical. There were changes to their pension. Our state employees are middle-class workers. Their raises are dependent on what they can buy, what they can spend. All that money gets spent in the state. I think they need the increases. They deserve the increases, and that we're fighting over is never a good idea.
Now, Liz can't wait to get into this one.
What's interesting, though, and when we go back to talking about why does this sort of signal to us that the governor is thinking about running for re-election, is because we all know the political power of the state employee unions and the effect they have, particularly on Democrat politics. And they're going into a contract year, right? Their contract expires in 2027. You painfully remember the 2017 negotiation issues and where we ended up with that. So the governor is clearly signaling to the state employees, I'm putting you here. And the Republicans are saying, well, the taxpayers are still struggling and we need to be thinking about them.
And the good part about it is the General Assembly now votes on the state contract.
That is correct. That is actually the best outcome of that 2017 contract piece, was that the legislature now actually is required to take a stand as opposed to deemed approved, which allowed them to take their hands off of it and just blame the executive branch and the union. So that is probably the best outcome of that deal.
Yeah, I agree. When it's a day when I agree with a little bit of what the Republicans put forward and a little bit of what the Democrats put forward. You know, on the municipal side, I believe the GOP presented kind of a cap on how municipalities can tax their communities. I'm interested to hear more about that, and I'm hoping that Democrats and Republicans come to the table and take themes of both ends, because that's what we need in the state.
I miss the days of Dan Malloy saying, I am your servant.
All right, guys, up next on Cal Report, more bickering at the state capitol between utility companies concerning a new bill that's on the table. We'll discuss that when we get back. Don't go away. Well, things got a little testy during the Energy and Technology Committee public hearing at the Capitol last week. Lawmakers, utility company lobbyists, and PURA were on hand to discuss a bill that would consolidate power at the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. As PURA to McKinney, taking a number of commissioners from 5 to 3. Utility companies aren't fans of that proposal, and when one of their lobbyists took what was perceived as a personal shot at PURA commissioner, lawmakers came to her defense. Watch this.
A judge, in my opinion, and I think if I looked it up in the dictionary, a judge is an impartial arbiter of the facts of the record. So when I see a judge at PURA, I'll let you know.
Wow, nice shot. Well, obviously a slightly different approach between our two utilities in our state.
I am really at this point in time where I am at my fundamental wit's end with the lack of civility in the way that the utility companies are engaging in these rate cases. And that last comment, I'll just say, like, I can't believe you just came before this committee and would make a comment like that, denigrating a human being who is regulating the industry you're standing here to represent.
Wow, wow. McKinney, what do you think of that, huh?
Listen, I forget the name of the state representative who
Foster
chastised the representative from
Evan Green. Yeah.
Spot on. Look, you can have your differences. You don't come there and impugn the character of other people in front of the legislature. You should never do that. Legislators shouldn't do it. It wouldn't be acceptable if they were impugning the character of the employees at the utility companies. Good for the state representative.
Look, I was in the room, and during my time as speaker, just to be clear, I never heard much about PURA. I knew a few of the folks over there. I knew occasionally an issue. PURA is now front and center, and I think a lot of that is because of how they've gone about their business. And yeah, I lobby and my company works with Eversource, but that doesn't change my opinion. I think they are an adjudicated body, that they need to be siloed away from all the policy stuff. But now up at the legislature, we hear about PURA all the time, and we hear about rulings, and whether it's Marissa Gillette or anybody else, we shouldn't be hearing about the commissioners, but we are, because it's now become political. Why did the legislature give that power away over to that? Because you can't have it be political. You need it to really look at the numbers, talk about what the state needs, what's the supply, what's the impact to the ratepayers, and have an honest discussion on how to make it better. That's really hard right now, and I think you see the emotions bubbled up in the hearing. I'm not trying to excuse it, but Senator Needleman poked at her a few times, referred to her that she was never a regulator, she was an attorney. So look, we all need to ratchet this down.
Yeah, how do we turn it down, Liz?
Well, I mean, look, Republicans for years have been saying we needed to pull PURA out of deep, right? Because PURA should just be an adjudicative regulatory body and not a policymaker. And unfortunately, because of Dan Malloy, that's no longer the case. So I think that's the aim of Republicans. But it's important to note here, too, the bills that were being proposed by Senator Needleman and Representative Steinberg were doing so to retroactively make okay Marissa Gillette's unilateral action on PURA cases and issues, where she's supposed to have all three commissioners participating, and she was making decisions on her own. And the genesis of this legislation was intended to make right what she was doing wrong. And that's important to frame this entire conversation. And by the way, the law right now says there shall be 5 PURA commissioners. The governor has unilaterally decided he's only going to have 3. And so if you're going to change the law, fine. But right now it is supposed to.
Danielle, wrap it up.
Yeah, in the best interest of ratepayers, I think that we've gone far away from that with these discussions
Totally
and this
agree.
rut of finger pointing and the back and forth. And if a mayor representing ratepayers on the local level, I do believe that there should be a lot more transparency, and unilaterally deciding on cases is unacceptable. So I do believe that whether it's a copy and paste on legislative, they should really figure out and pay attention to the details and really get back central the ratepayers in the middle of this conversation, because we were so lost.
But the reason why PURA is getting more into policy is because the legislatures failed. And Joe, the legislators don't want to take over the policy. They want to blame high electric rates on some bureaucrat at PURA.
Or the utility company.
Or the utilities. They don't want to take responsibility for having not solved what is a really difficult problem to solve. That's the bottom line.
All right, guys, up next on Capitol Report, Connecticut's U.S. senators fuming about the actions being taken by President Trump and Elon Musk. We'll dive deeper into this when we get back. Don't go away in a non-PURA segment. Panelists start arguing PURA here. Connecticut's congressional delegation in Washington continues to voice its disapproval of the actions being taken by the Trump administration. First, Senator Chris Murphy was front and center last week to rail against the seemingly unchecked power of Elon Musk now wields inside the U.S. government. Here's the Murph leading a rally outside the Treasury Department. Watch the Murph here.
This is a constitutional crisis that we are in today. Let's call it what it is. The people get to decide how we defend the United States of America. The people get to decide how their taxpayer money is spent. Elon Musk does not get to decide.
Then you have Senator Richard Blumenthal reacting to President Trump's proposal to get this, take control of the Gaza Strip. Watch Blumenthal here.
The idea of sending United States troops to be wounded and potentially killed in Gaza makes no sense. It's nonsensical, and I believe should be rescinded, disavowed by the president as soon as possible.
Hey, McKinney, the Murph playing Doge ball, as they call it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, look, could the Democrats play into President Trump's hand any more than they already are? Every single day, Senator Murphy's telling us we're a day away from our democracy being taken away from us. Every single day, whatever Trump says, they have to take the opposite side. Trump's on issues that 80% of Americans, a majority of Democrats, favor, and then Chris Murphy goes screaming on the other side. It doesn't make any sense. Here's food for thought. In 2015, when Donald Trump came down those escalators, his approval ratings 10 years later are higher than they've ever been. The public opinion of the Democratic Party over that time is lower than it's been in decades. What they're doing isn't working. You can't scream the sky is falling on every single item, especially when you ignored those issues on your side. Donald Trump campaigned. He brought Elon Musk up on stage with him and said, Elon Musk is going to help me cut out waste, fraud, and abuse. Chris Murphy says billionaires are bad now. He didn't mind billionaire George Soros. He didn't mind the billionaires who were helping him. But now he's got a problem. It's hypocrisy. People see it. They need to change their tune. Last point, they need to listen to Jim Himes, who came out and said, nobody cares about U.S. aid. They don't know about it. The middle class isn't worried about it. Let's focus on things that matter to the middle class.
The president coming out and essentially sharing his plans to invade and gentrify an entire people and country is at its core overreach and just downright evil. It's bad. And here's where we are. And I do agree with you, John, on levels of, Democrats, they're not getting the word out quite right. I don't know if rallies is really going to do it. I don't know if it's not really moving me, right? I appreciate our representatives at the Capitol really driving home and sharing and being a voice for the people, but I think we need more voices at the table because the narrative and the goal isn't working. We need to talk about what we're going to do, what do you need from the communities, and how are we going to get there together. And, we got the president for 4 more years. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, look, I think that this whole fight over whose billionaires are better is problematic for everybody, right? And I think Republicans, it's important that we remember, for example, when Governor Ned Lamont wanted to allow Ray Dalio to sort of have an overview and oversight over $300 million. Democrats seem certainly fine with that, and Republicans had a problem with it. So I think we all need to remember that the government is going to have its balance of power, and we're going to have to let the levers of government work.
All right, guys. Gambling on the Super Bowl today. We have some other betting action. You want to take a wager at the state capitol? We'll explain when we get back. Don't go away.
We can get a little betting.
How about that, huh? Today marks the biggest day of the year for sports betting. If that isn't enough to whet your appetite, you may want to get in on the action inside the hearing rooms at the legislative office buildings. Take it away, Senator James Maroney. Watch this.
Now that we have cognizance over gambling, we're going to try to set an over-under for each meeting. Of course, social betting has not been legalized yet, but in anticipation of that happening, we're hoping for 17 minutes and 30 seconds at the over-under today.
How about that for a prop bet, guys? Get your fan, but who do you got, Danielle? Super Bowl.
K-Dot.
Okay, right? Who do you got?
Kansas City.
Kansas City. Liz?
Travis Kelce.
All right, Johnny Mac?
I hate both teams.
All right. You hate both teams. This is Danielle's last show. Congratulations, Danielle. We'd love to have you here. Huh? Good job to you, Les. I'm Tom Dutch. I'll see you guys next week. Woo.